Okay, these are the notes on section 5.1. For these notes, I'm hoping you went into the exploration that you were told to do in the announcements in Canvas today. So a midsegment of a triangle, which I defined for you in that announcement, is a segment connecting the midpoints of two sides. So the triangle midsegment theorem, this is what you should have found when you measured different sides and different angles in your exploration. If a segment joins the midpoint of two sides of a triangle, then that segment is parallel to the third side and is half its length, half the length of that side, the third side. So I have some problems here and examples. I'm going to talk through them and I have my work shown. So in the first one it says in triangle XYZ, M, N, and P are midpoints. So as soon as I read that sentence, I stopped reading and I went and you can see I marked my diagram accordingly. So M is the midpoint, so I marked that. P is the midpoint. Notice I didn't give it the same marks that I did before because I don't know that XP and XM are congruent. I only know that XP and PZ are congruent because P is the midpoint. And I did the same thing down here. So as soon as I read they were midpoints, I marked my diagram accordingly. So everything in red is something I added. Then I read the next sentence. The perimeter of triangle MNP is 60. Okay, well the perimeter is when you add all the sides together. So here's triangle MNP. So trace that out. So I know if I add 22, 24, and the mystery side here, NP, I should get 60. So you can see I solved that equation and I got that NP was 14. They also asked me for YZ. So I looked at YZ here and I looked at the mid segment that's parallel to it. So that's MP. And I know that this mid segment is half the length of the third side. So if this is 22, then this side, the third side, should be twice that, or 44. And I showed that here. In the next example, they want us to find the angles. You can see by the markings that M must be the midpoint of AB and N must be the midpoint of AC. So those are very important things because now that I know that this is a mid-segment, I also know that NM and CB are parallel from the theorem we did before. That is very important. Now the other piece is I want you to look up at triangle ANM. Focus right here. Look at the markings here. What kind of triangle is triangle ANM? I'm hoping you said isosceles. It is an isosceles triangle, and because that's an isosceles triangle, we know these base angles are equal. So we're bringing that knowledge from chapter 4 into our knowledge, into what we're doing in chapter 5. So this angle here was 75. Angle B and angle AMN are corresponding angles with parallel lines. This is the transversal, parallel line, parallel line. So this angle is 75. This one will also be 75 because they're corresponding angles. So I found out angle AMN is 75 because if lines are parallel, then they have congruent corresponding angles. Now that I know this is 75, using ITT, if two sides are congruent, these angles across from them are congruent. So I know angle ANM is also 75. For the next slide, you'll see the markings that I made that I'm telling you with the markings that E is the midpoint of segment AD and B is the midpoint of segment AC. I would like you to fill in that diagram, draw it, fill it in, and figure out what you can determine from that. Again, make sure you look at your markings. So I would like you to try this by yourself. So please push pause now and try this yourself. Okay, the answers are here. So I found out AB was 10, and since AB and BC are marked congruent, that means BC must be 10 because that's the way the pictures were marked. They said DC was 18, that was in the given, or CD was 18. EB is the mid-segment, so it is half the length of the third side, so the side that it's not touching. So EB must be 9. And then to get AC, well, I can see from my diagram, it's just 10 plus 10, so AC is 20. All right, in the next one, please again notice what I'm giving you. I gave you a triangle and I told you R, S, and T are midpoints. So I would draw this diagram and mark that they're midpoints. Mark that down on your diagram so you can kind of make that visual connection. So what I would like you to do is push pause and try all these problems yourself. And then you come back and check your answers. So please push pause now to attempt the problems. Okay, the answer's a lot of work here. So you'll see I marked all the midpoints with my red, and then I also marked what was parallel with the blue arrows, because if it's a mid-segment, it's parallel to the third side. So naming all the parallel sides, I think you can see that, RS and GI, because RS is the mid-segment and GI is that third side, the side it's not connecting, and you can check your answers there. In number 2, they tell us GH is 20. So here's GH over here, and HI is 18. And they want us to find RT. So basically what they've done in this problem is give us too much information. They're trying to figure out, do you know which segment to use? Well, RT is the mid-segment. HI is that third side of the triangle, the side of the bigger triangle that RT does not touch. So RT is half of HI, which I wrote here, and you can see the answer. In number 3, they gave us measures of parts, and you can see here again I wrote an explanation. ST is half of the third side, which is GH. They told me RH was 7 right here. That means GR must be 7 and the whole side must be 14. ST is equal to half of that, so that is 7. This RS being 5 is not helpful at all. We don't need that information. And the GH equals 20 was not helpful information. They have that there to determine, do you know which side to take half of, or are you just taking half of any number you see? So they're testing to see that. In number 4, now they're using the parallel pieces, the parts I marked in blue, because they're talking about angles. I know that they are asking me for angle GTR. So trace that, okay? Well, GTR, here's the parallel line right here. And I'm going to look for the other parallel line. Oh, that's right here. Okay? And I'm going to use this transversal right here. So angle I right here is corresponding to angle GTR because they both share this transversal and they both are use these parallel lines. And you can see with corresponding angles why that equals. In the next example, it's a very similar idea. I'm looking for ITS. So ITS. Okay, here's ITS. It's using this parallel line with the 2 arrows. So it's going to correspond with this. Okay, and I'll use this as my transversal. So ITS, this angle, is corresponding with angle G. The problem is they didn't tell me angle G. So as I move down, they told me angle H and I know that angle HI and angle G together equal 180. I substituted my measurements for angle H and I, which I had here, to get that angle G is 59. Now that I know this is 59, I know angle ITS must also be 59 because it is corresponding, because these lines are parallel and angle G and angle ITS are corresponding. So that is the conclusion of the notes for today. You can check the announcement to see what you should be doing next.